Welcome to the Zombie Antidote Podcast, where we cure you of the poison of the system. Today we got a special guest, Lance Wride. How you doing, Lance?
Doing great. Thanks, Kyle.
Great. Lance is here today. He's someone who's near and dear to my heart. He is my father-in-law. And we brought him on, though, because his story is so valuable for so many people out there. Just to tell you a little bit about Lance, he is getting close to retirement. He's been at the same company now for almost 30 years, so in the same career, very loyal, great journey there. He began his investment journey in real estate about 3 years ago, just shy of 3 years, and he currently has 2 rentals. He also transitioned his primary residence to a new home, a brand new home. I think before it was about 3,000 square feet. The home was maybe 30 years old. And now you have a brand new home that's about 5,000 square feet. And it has the eligibility to have an entire apartment rental in it, right? So that's a little bit about Lance. And what we're going to do today is talk about his journey. So something that is not unique to Lance, or I think to anybody really, it's fear. Fear comes up with everybody on the real estate journey. And so we're going to dive in today talking about fear. Thanks for being on with us, Lance.
I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. So regarding fear, tell us what fear, what emotions came up when you went on this investment journey?
I think the biggest fear for me was just the unknown, just kind of the unknown of the market itself, real estate, just where's it going to go from here? Did I miss? I guess there's a few different fears. Did I miss the window already? Different things like that. But I think the unknown is the biggest fear.
Okay, so the unknown coming up.
Yeah.
And how do you feel as you were in the process? How do you feel you, how do I say this? Took steps towards understanding the unknown and combating the unknown?
Well, I think you deserve a lot of that credit. I mean, you came to us when you got your real estate license and were transitioning your career yourself. And you had already gone down this road with a few properties that you hadn't even mentioned to us. But once you brought that out, you educated us and helped us understand it. It was still scary, though, just to think about, moving money from one place to another, thinking, is it too late in my career and my life to do this? Just things like that.
Yeah. And I know we've talked a little bit offline about this subject in general, but you just hit on is it too late, in my life to do this? I think a lot of people ask that, whether they're in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, even 60s, right? And if you're past that, you're like, hey, I'm in retirement. Do you feel there's like an age that you could be too late, or what are your thoughts on that?
I would have said years ago, I would have said yes, but I don't believe that's the case now. Having experienced myself, I don't think there's ever a time where it's too late. Real estate is a solid investment. The track record shows the history of how solid it really is, especially in Utah. You've taught me all these things, so I'm educated on it now.
Yeah. So
I don't think there's ever a time to say it's too late to transition into that investment type.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to talk about it a little more, there is, especially as the markets are shifting right now, there is, there's a saying that when you talk about the past, it's like, oh, what a great opportunity. Oh, you caught the boat. Oh, you this or that. And the reality is like at the time, it didn't necessarily look like opportunity. It looked like risk, right? And so there is a moment along all journeys of like, is this the right time? And if we sit and tell ourselves the story of like, well, I missed the boat yesterday, we're never gonna catch the next boat, right?
Yeah.
And did you have some of those feelings along the way?
Yeah, I did, because 10 years ago or so, I actually looked into the real estate market, right, because I thought it was, things just the CDs and interest rates for CDs, and then the stock market just was really struggling. And so I had some money that I needed to put somewhere. And so I looked at real estate. At the time, it was interesting to me. So I think that as far as saying you missed the boat, I think that's just wasted energy. And I think you just look at the trends. I mean, I'm a CFO for the company I work for, so we're constantly looking at trends and looking at the marketplace and how we transition, how we reinvent ourselves. And I think it's the same with real estate. I think, if you look at the history, you're going to see ups and downs, but overall you're going to see a steady climb, which is kind of a no-brainer when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think something we talk a lot about, I've talked with you about, I talk to a lot of clients about, is the identity of an investor. You can always create a story why it won't work, and you can always create a story why it will work. And the important point is as you take on that identity is, how do I find the way? How do I make sure to cover myself from the risks and all the things that might come up? But how do I find the way? So I think you mentioned, 10 years ago, let's just give the audience a little context here. So I actually remember this. We were finishing college at the time, and you were looking at several properties to buy. Pricing, I know we've talked a little bit offline. What was the price of one of those townhomes at the time?
One of them that I put an offer on, I think, was $95,000.
$95,000.
We looked at a couple other properties that nothing was much more than $100,000.
Yeah, $110,000. What do you think the values of those properties are today?
Probably anywhere from $400,000, $500,000, $600,000.
Yeah,
in the property. Yeah,
$400,000 to $500,000. Wow,
in a 10-year period. So
in a 10-year period, right? And the data shows. And at the time, right, you're coming just out of 07, 08. There's no secure future there. There's still unstable ground. You don't know what's going to happen. But then along the way, as we engage, you eventually took that step, right? So let's talk about, now that you've gone on that journey and you are where you are today, you have 2 rental properties that are both cash flowing in the state of Utah. You have your primary residence that you could add an apartment on and cash flow. You're actually putting that apartment in now. You're just deciding whether or not you want to keep it for you guys to enjoy or whether you want to rent it out. Now that this has all happened, how do you feel about it at this point in time?
Well, it's great. I feel great because, we have the history behind us. I think the thing that helped me overcome that fear, though, was you, in the sense. So I guess, you need to find somebody who's educated, somebody who has the knowledge necessary to help you overcome that fear that you have of change or of the market, whatever the fear might be, of being a landlord. I know I had that fear of just, do I really want the hassle of a landlord? So there's lots of fears that might come up for a potential client of yours, but I think the key is they need to come to you. I think first,
sure,
they need to come to you because you've educated yourself in a way that really makes sense. I mean, I've heard people in our own family listen to your podcast and say, man, it just makes so much sense what Kyle says. So I think that's a way to overcome that fear, is find someone, whether it's you or someone else, that actually has done the homework, has the data like you do, and it's kind of black and white at that point.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate it. And thinking to our audience, thinking about our audience out there, is they might already have a relationship with someone they're working with, or they might be trying to find a new relationship. Just to give them a little bit more meat, to give some advice to them. What specifically was it that I did? You mentioned like, hey, I'm educated, and the way I approach things, like what is it that they should be seeking out in the relationships that they're engaged with to essentially start or continue on a real estate investment journey? What would they need to seek out?
I think they need to, first of all, seek out somebody who cares.
Okay.
Somebody who cares about them, and it's not just about getting a commission. And I think the second thing is they need to have somebody who understands the market, not just the past market, but understands the current market, what the projections are for the future, and has a clear knowledge of all of that data for them to feel comfortable about making this move.
That's great. And I think two of the things that kind of integrate into that are so important, that I feel not just myself, but my team, everybody around me is so particular about, is number one is learning how to play in all sorts of markets, right? So bringing the data to the table and allowing us to have options. There's not one direction. I don't have a crystal ball. You don't have a crystal ball, right? So angling ourselves as best as we can. And then the second one is community, right? I think one of the biggest things, the same way I was able to support you on your journey, you had me as part of your community, right? I have community as well from a real estate perspective and professionals and mentors around me that really allow me to show up in each and every moment, even when things are shifting, right? So yeah, thank you so much for that. The next question I have for you is, as individuals might be considering investing or leaning in, what advice would you give to anybody out there who maybe hasn't started yet?
I think the biggest thing for me would be to say, just look at the history of real estate. You know, I mean, my uncle, who's very dear to me, he's a CPA. He did our taxes forever, but he just retired a few years ago at the age of 80. And he always told me, invest in real estate. And I never followed his advice until now, but you know, that's from someone who's experienced life to its fullest, you know, to invest in real estate. So I think the biggest thing is to look at the data. That's the advice I would give them. The second thing is you need to find a qualified individual to help you on the journey. I see people all the time who try and sell their homes on their own, or they try and buy something on their own. I think it's a really big mistake because, you know, they look, well, I'm losing all this commission, but they're missing the boat when they look at it that way, because actually it's the opposite. Yeah. At least that's how it was for us. I mean, with your help, to sell our home, our previous home, to buy these properties, it actually saved us money in the end, and we have more equity because of it. So yeah. I think first and foremost, study the market, which is very black and white. It's pretty clear that it's a solid investment. Second, find a qualified professional like yourself, who understands the market and actually leads by example. That's the thing that I love about you, is that when you came to us, you had already tested this out. You had 2 properties that you were just trying to learn it. And the way you learned it was to actually experience it yourself. Yeah. So I think someone who leads by example, who actually has investments themselves and has experience in this, it's so much easier to follow somebody who's already gone down that path than to have somebody who's never done that tell you to go down that path. Does that make sense?
And I don't know if you know, but it's a statistic that I believe it's like 98% of realtors don't own a second piece of property. So when you're calling a realtor to get advice on like what investment should I buy, question mark there. Yeah. Right.
I think if there's someone who doesn't have income properties themselves, you need to find somebody else, because how can they guide and direct you if they haven't experienced it? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, one of the things in my life, I truly believe in leading by example, and that's what you do.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I love that. It definitely, it's not just the know-how. I mean, this is such an important point to me, because you mentioned caring. It's like, it's not just the know-how, but like, I know as we're talking about fear here today, that came up a lot, right? It came up for you, especially, you know, being a generation that you were raised by parents that went through world wars, right? The emotions that come through, be conservative, don't go into debt, pay everything off, like a lot of those teachings, right? They're still passed down to generation, and they're very, very valuable. And there's another side of the story that you can combine the two and create kind of a perfect storm. I don't coach or educate to be reckless. There's kind of this great combination. But me having gone on the journey, I think that makes it so valuable for people is I have felt the emotions too. Yeah. So like I can sit there and be like, yeah, I remember the time. Yeah, I remember the time. And it's just sounding to me like that was so important for you guys, is like having that. It turns from a professional to like the friend of like, okay, we're okay.
Well, and then also seeing your success in it, you know, just like seeing how it's literally changed your life, you know, and changed your career to a whole different career. Yeah. Just the things that it's allowed you to do. And I think that's really important. And then I think it's important to sometimes you just got to step out of your comfort zone and just go for it. Go for it. And, you know, because you can always find an excuse. You know, when we were going through this process, there was constantly things coming up that was like, okay, this is a good excuse for us not to do this. This is a reason why we should maybe back out of this. And luckily you were there to coach us through it. And I think that's important. You know, I mean, it's just like within life itself or in sports, you know, you have your coach there to help you push through those tough times, to help push through your doubts when you're in a slump or whatever. And that's what you were able to do for us. And I think that that's what made it even more successful for us is the fact that we knew you had our back, and you knew you weren't going to steer us in the wrong direction. Yeah.
I love it. Well, Lance, thank you so much for being with us today. I think to wrap up, I've got one more question. Where do you go from here? What's next?
Well, I think the thing that a lot of people are going to say is like, okay, with interest rates high now, we missed it. We missed the window. We should have done it sooner. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. I mean, you can go back in history. The other thing is, don't have regrets about it. Okay, you think you missed the window. Well, you can change it now. Mm-hmm. And that's where I go. That's where we're going to go. We're going to continue to invest in real estate, whether it's residential or commercial. We're going to continue down this path because it's been solid for us. Now that we have a couple units under our belt and we're cash flowing, we have some additional funds. It makes it a little bit easier. So as you go through unit by unit, it just becomes easier and easier because it gives you more financial flexibility to maybe have a unit sit vacant for a month or this or that takes away that fear.
Yeah, I love that because you just mentioned that flexibility starts to come over time, right? So if you actually look at it, the first unit, the second unit, those are the hardest ones. Yeah. Like you guys overcame the hardest part of the journey and then you're continuing on that journey. So, absolutely. I love that. And so to pull one quick thread to wrap up, you mentioned, hey, interest rates are high and that could prevent someone from buying right now. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is it a good time to buy or is it not?
Well, price-wise, it's the perfect time to buy. Okay. So I think for people, especially people in my situation who maybe are closer to retirement, they could put more money down to get better interest rates. They could still cash flow. There's ways to get around this because actually now is the best time to buy because the market's slowed down, prices have dipped a little bit, and that's the best time to buy. So I think as far as interest rates go, I mean, yeah, if you're a beginner and maybe you just don't have a lot of capital right now to work with, maybe that's a concern. But I think if you're transitioning from one market to another, or if you have money sitting that you don't know what to do with, now's the perfect time.
Yeah. No, I love that. And thank you so much. And even last night you texted me. And I've actually been talking with a group about this very subject, and we've looked into it. I cashed my 401k out in the time of COVID, right? Because I was allowed to, and I got no penalties, and I transitioned it to real estate. But what did you text me last night?
The self-directed IRAs, where you can take your IRA 401k money, not have to pay any penalties, and move it into a self-directed IRA and buy real estate with it. Yeah, I just think it's a market that's untapped, and to be honest with you, I would love to do it myself.
Yeah.
So that's why I texted you and said, hey, let's look into this. Now would be the perfect time for people like that because the prices have dipped a little.
Yeah, you can get that low price. Even though the rate's high, we can refinance in the future, right?
Yeah, or you just pay cash,
with that IRA. Yeah. So thank you so much, Lance. And everybody out there, Lance, we'll be looking into this. Lance will probably definitely become maybe one of our resident experts at a self-directed IRA and be able to help those out there that are considering doing the same. There's untapped resources of funds out there. There's 401ks that can be converted to self-directed IRAs. There's equity within property. We definitely don't want to ever over leverage, and we want to be smart with what we're doing. But I think now is a really good time to really consider what's coming up. And I remember the old saying that I shouldn't even call it an old saying. It was something I said to you that we discussed a lot. But I said, Lance, let's take 25% of your retirement and double what's going to come at retirement time.
Yeah.
That was kind of my challenge that we put out. So I think we're still on that quest. So thank you so much for being here with us and sharing with everybody. And with that, it's a wrap.